Welcome to Judaism Demystified, a podcast for the perplexed. Join us as we explore some of the most fascinating Jewish and Torah-related topics with our esteemed guests. By tackling some of the biggest questions you likely won't find addressed elsewhere, we aim to shed light on important issues and inspire a return to the fundamentals. Enjoy the show. Thank you for joining the Judaism Demystified podcast. We are joined by Jacob Falach. Thank you so much. We've been trying to make this happen for a long time, so we really appreciate you making the time. To
Thank
start,
you guys for having me on. I
oh,
appreciate it.
pleasure. To start, could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, your connection to Judaism, and your work at the Daily Wire?
Yeah, sure. So I am a political activist. I am a writer and associate producer for the large conservative company, The Daily Wire. Have been since 2020. My connection to Judaism, I was born to an Israeli father and a non-Jewish mother, whom, by the way, I love and is a she loves God as much as I do. And I wanted to be halachically Jewish, so I converted with Chabad about 2 years ago now. Took me about 3 years. My father is of both Ashkenazi and Sephardic lineage. His father was from Libya, his mother was from Poland. They came over after the war. So I've had quite the Jewish experience. Even before I converted, my dad, the faith in the household was Judaism, even knowing, halachically, wasn't a part of that yet. Grew up going to Shul, Chanukah, Pesach, all that. But it wasn't until a few years ago I decided to put the stamp down and make it real.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And your work at the Daily Wire, how did that come about?
Yeah, so I was in high school. I got into politics like a lot of people nowadays who are into politics. It was the 2016 election. All the stuff going on with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. It was
Hard
like
not to be into politics
it,
these days.
it was hard not. It was like everything. Like people were talking about that more than they were talking about, the latest scandal with whatever celebrity. Like it was the talk of everything. Um, I grew up in a very it was like a 99.9% Hispanic city in California. It was called Downey. So naturally, because of what I was hearing from my friends, I was very anti-Trump until my dad kind of sat me down. He was like, "These people that you're siding with, you know how they feel about Israel and about the Jewish people and about this and about that?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "You know what? Just listen to what your friends are telling you. Come to me and ask me what if it's true what they're saying or not. Let me answer for you. And then in your own time, kind of look into what they're saying about you and your people." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I did my research, and by senior year of high school, that was 2019. So it was well into Trump's term. I was obsessed with Ben Shapiro, saw all of his stuff online, was regurgitating his arguments out at my friends who weren't happy that I leaned the way I did. And I was in history class one day, and I was like, you know what? Let me see if I could find their email and send them an email and say I want to work for Ben Shapiro, or whatever. So I think on LinkedIn, the personal email of the HR manager at the Daily Wire at the time. It was a much smaller company then than it was now. And I sent the most unprofessional email ever, like, "Hi, I'm a big fan, this and that." I gave like my political ideology. I was like, "I'm Jewish, I love Ben. I want to be just like him, whatever." Um, and I didn't hear back. And 6 months passed, and I'm in my first semester at university. And then I remember I was sitting in class, and then I get a ping on my phone. I'm like trying to make the professor like not see him on my phone. Like, "What?" I look, and it was an email from from the HR person saying, "Hey, you still want a job?" So I immediately, I just walked out of class. I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I walked straight out of my lecture. I called my dad. I was like, "Dad, I got an interview with the Daily Wire. Let's go!" My dad was like jumping up and down. Uh,
Awesome.
and then I went, and by Hashem's grace, they loved me, and I started off as a very low position there. It was COVID. I was like cleaning doorknobs. I was wiping off the tables, whatever. I was involved a little bit in the production side, helping like move cameras and equipment or whatever. And then we moved to Nashville in 2020 from LA because LA is just awful, especially for a business trying to survive. Um, a producer was needed, so they threw me onto Michael Knowles' show. It was a big jump, huge jump, from what I was doing to being a producer. I had to learn on the fly, but I got really close to Michael, and I worked my way up over the years and started writing for them as well, opinion pieces about everything. And yeah, It was a big for one, I did not expect to get the job. I didn't deserve the job. My only job experience was being like a bartender at some bar in my own city. Like they had no reason to hire me whatsoever. Um,
So how did you have like the chops to handle being like a producer? Like what did you need to figure out or learn? Did you learn in your few years before that?
it's very, I thank God. So I'm an associate producer. So it means that there's a main producer, and then I produce with him, and I take over the stuff that he doesn't. And when I got the job, the producer was teaching me everything. He was,
Mm,
kind of showing me the ropes and everything like that. But a lot of it I did have to learn on my own. And it's really just, you go on YouTube and you look at what works for other channels and you try to incorporate that into your talent, whether it be the thumbnails, whether it be how you write the description or how you write the titles or what the videos should be. It's definitely a learning, and you still learn every day because trends online change all the time, and you want to incorporate that into into your channel. But it was tough in the beginning, but I'm used to it now, and I love what I do. So
amazing.
That's
yep.
Right.
awesome, by the way.
Yeah. So now that you mentioned that you write as well, there's an article that you wrote in 2023 called Four Pervasive Myths About Israel and Why They're Wrong.
Mhm.
And you pointed to the far left as the loudest critics of the Jewish state. But since October 7th, we've seen arguably the loudest hostility coming from parts of the populist right, figures like Tucker Carlson and so on, and increasing ideological confusion among young Americans who simultaneously champion human rights and support
Mhm.
regimes that violate them. Have your views changed since writing that piece? And what do you make of this growing left-right horseshoe convergence against Israel?
It's a good question. So, as far as if my views have changed, um, I think the left and the right, I think they're both loud, standing against, with their anti-Semitism and standing against Israel in their own way. I think the left is loud, as in on the streets, taking to the streets and doing all these protests, whereas the right is loud primarily online. And I think a lot of that is empowered by, X. X is now it's just a cesspool of Nazism and radical Islam and just everything in between. So I think they're both loud. But I also think there's a distinction. I'm not going to say one is more evil than the other between the different types of anti-Semitism on both sides. But the distinction is that the left, they try to hide their anti-Semitism under a kind of political, like, we want decolonization, we want this, because they try to mask it under some very flawed moral ideology. They try to hide it. And there's a lot of like, sorry for my, like, there's a lot of idiots who are just like thinking that they're morally correct, and they're not hating Jews in their activism on the left. I've been to many college campuses. I've spoken to many college students, my age, about this stuff, and they're saying everything from, yeah, we need to, basically saying without saying, we need to ethnically cleanse the entirety of Israel. We need to, impose this against Zionists in the U.S., this and that. But then when you ask them about Jews specifically, they're like, oh, I have nothing against Jews. Like they hear all the things they're saying about how like hating Jews, and then they say, no, but I don't hate Jews. So that's like I think a lot of it is like ignorant hatred. There is definitely some like legitimate Jew hatred, but then you have the right and this anti-Semitism that's crept up on the right over the past few years. I think it kind of kicked up a lot with the Kanye stuff, and then after October 7th, it just blew up. The thing about the right wing that you'll see, you have these larger pundits who try to hide it in a similar way to the left about they're trying to act like isolationists or whatever. But you have a lot of the large populace of people who don't support Israel on the right online. You see all these accounts. They just straight up say, I don't like Jews. They say that, Jews are doing usury, Jews are doing this, and Jews are doing that, and they're like, I'm not to use their language, but they're naming the Jew. So they don't hide it. So I think it's two different types of hatred, um, more deceptive on the left, more in your face on the right, more to it on the right. Um, and you are correct that it is a horseshoe, in the sense that both complete polar opposites are getting to the same. But when you say horseshoe, I think when you're referring to, because both sides are both hating Jews at the same time, I would even take it a step further. And I'd say it's also a horseshoe for not only the hatred of Jews, but the support of radical Islam. You have both sides doing that, which is very interesting.
Mm.
You have the right from like 15 years ago, who was like very, not anti-Muslims, not the right word, but anti-Islamic empire because of 9/11, because of all the wars we fought over there and everything like that. There was a sense of knowing that the Islamic empire is not a friend of the West, and we've been at war with them because of these reasons. They, you had politicians citing Quranic, you know, Quranic prophecies about all of the like non-believers in Islam dying in the West and stuff like that, you know. But now you have the right who is like kind of being sympathetic to it because they don't like Israel. And they think Israel is like they're you have the Christians and the not Christians, but the what's the right word? The far right fake Christians, like just holding hands with radical Islamists in their hatred of Israel. And they don't realize what they're doing. You know, they don't understand that the the Islamist will hold their hand in hating the Jew until it's time for the Islamists to also come after them, you know? So it's really interesting that you have both sides doing that. The left supports them because they're brown. I mean, they say the more brown you are, the more morally just and correct you are. Um, so yeah, it's really interesting to see, but uh, I'm definitely very surprised from the right how it's gone in this direction so quick. I
And
5 years ago, I would never have expected it at all.
and you brought up X, the fact that it's accessible. Do you consider that to be true because the monetization of like engagement, like people are like more, it reinforces this behavior, like, oh, let me keep going down rabbit holes and making up conspiracies, or like because I can make money off this, and people seem to be, engaging in it, so they have like the motivation. Is that what you're trying to say?
I mean, it's like, you know, it's a very hard topic to grasp as a conservative because, you know, up until I can't remember what year Elon Musk took over X. Maybe it was like 2023 or 2024 or something like that.
Not long ago, yeah.
Yeah, not long ago. I was one of the people who was like, yeah, get those libs out of Twitter, put in someone who's going to respect free speech and stuff like that. It's like, you know, to an extent, I I believe everybody should be able to say what they want. You know, there's some people that'll push back and they'll say, but it's not infringing free speech to censor on X because it's not, you know, it's a private company and whatever. The thing is though, when it comes to the main social media platforms of the age, like this is the public place. Like social media is the public space. If you were to just mute every single conservative account overnight, we would have an extremely liberal society in a year. You know, it's like so it's a very hard question to answer if I think it's, you know, if I think it's because of all that and, you know, the implied question, do I think it should be stopped? I don't know. It's hard. I don't think I would censor the people doing it because I think that would just put fuel in the fire.
For
You
sure.
know, I know you've seen the memes, the Jew made the call, you know, to shut this person
It'll
down.
feed into their
To the
theory.
agenda,
Exactly. Don't
narrative.
feed into it. I don't think you should censor them. But man, all the people that realize how stupid these people are need to be vocal. Like myself, like you guys, need to be vocal in like combating it. Because if you're not going to censor it and shut it down, people need to shut it down by using their speech as well. You know, it's like all of these conspiracy theories and all of these things, they fall apart with like a 30-second Google search.
Right.
Nobody wants to do it. People in the replies are just screaming anti-Semitism, but they're not saying why it's wrong. You know, that's like the thing that makes me the most upset. You'll see, I'm not going to name any names, but there's this big anti-Semitic account on it. His name's Jake Shields. He's an MMA
Oh yeah,
fighter.
yeah,
We
of
know.
course.
Yeah. Now I'm not going to name any names about the person that was replying to them, but there was a Jewish person with a really big following who I know for a fact knows how to reply to one of the conspiracies he was pushing. It was about the dancing Israelis conspiracy about 9/11.
Right, right.
And instead of quote tweeting it and putting, you know, all of the different, you know, he just quote tweets it and says this guy's an anti-Semitic piece of garbage or something along those lines.
It's
Yeah.
I'm
counterproductive.
like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? This guy's on the right. He doesn't care if you call him a bigot. He doesn't care. You know, if you tell him something that'll shut him up, that'll shut him up. But calling him anti-Semitic's not going to shut him up. He's going to make it do it even more because he likes being called that. Um, so yeah, it's a really it's really tough as a conservative to talk about that on X because I kind of advocated for it to be how it is now. But yeah, just people need to speak up more, man. That's why I started doing the stuff I did. I was making videos, but not at the rate that I did after October 7th. I was just sitting there before October 7th. I wasn't really talking about Jewish stuff all that much. I didn't have any videos about the war in the war in Gaza. I wasn't talking about anti-Semitism, anything like that. And then I was like, well, I kind of have to. Like, why am
I'm
I gonna?
I'm starting to sense, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm starting to sense there's a little bit of a fatigue talking about, the Jewish issue. Even people like Andrew Tate, who like, he said some terrible things about Jews. Even he's like, are you going to blame Jews for not going to the
I
reason why you
saw
go
that.
to the gym?
I saw
And
that.
like, I think it's just like tiring. People are like, okay, when you do it too much, it almost becomes like the boy who cried wolf. Like, seriously, like you're gonna blame this on the Jews. It gets a little ridiculous after a while. So in a way, like they're doing us a favor by continuing to go down those rabbit holes. Well, in a way, it
I,
seems
I
like
I feel like it's getting more powerful, not less powerful.
maybe could be. I don't know. It's just
Yeah, I kind of I saw the video you're talking about with Tate, and I understand the point that you're making about the fatigue, but I also think you should look at the response that Tate received online from that. It wasn't a bunch of because just like this Fuentes guy, Tate also has a cult behind him. Tate has a cult. His following are cultish, and his own people were going after him, saying, "Oh, Tate got the call. Oh, how many shekels did you take to say this on camera?" Or Tate's going soft. Tate's doing that. I don't know, man. I don't think people are fatigued just yet. I think it's still ramping up.
they were calling Alex Jones like a Zionist shill at one point because he was singing up about
Exactly,
Jews.
exactly. Nobody. It's like a competition to see who could be the most anti-Semitic, and if you're not in first place, you're getting called
It's in fashion right now.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's in
exactly.
fashion to be anti-Semitic, and what I'm trying to understand is, and I've been asked, I see everything that's going on X and everything. It's a disaster. I'm trying to understand how we got here. The war on Gaza, I get it. Yes, that is the perfect springboard for anti-Semites or to creep out of their room. Yes, but it's just it feels like it's taken a life of its own, and the speed of which it's taken a life of it, it's like it's as if it's a feeling as if like you would think that it's been going on for 30 years. You know what I mean? That like it's like such a ingrained, it's and I'm trying to understand like what happened over here. Like what happened? The left,
I'm
yeah,
sure I'm sure bots have a lot to do with it. There's a
yes,
lot of that.
yes,
Yeah,
I don't know.
there's a lot of bots, but I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. I do think the majority of it is legitimate, and I do think there's a lot of people who are not sympathetic to the Jewish people right now. Um, and it's the country over the past decade, 2 decades really, has been going through a very hard time. Uh, don't quote me on this, but I believe it was Theodore Herzl who wrote that it might have been Theodore, it might have been someone else from his time, but they wrote, "When nationalism rises, so does anti-Semitism." Every single time.
I was
Uh,
thinking about this.
Yeah.
when it's when a because look, as a conservative, I love nationalism. I think nationalism is a good thing. You should be nationalist and a patriot for the country. I'm an American nationalist, 100%. You should be. But when you get that nationalist mindset going, it's very easy to look for a scapegoat for your problems. And historically, the Jew has always been the scapegoat, always. Um, and whether it be because they were all too rich, or whether it be because they were all too poor, whether it be because they were all religious fanatics, or because they were all degenerate atheists. It just every they're always the scapegoat. I believe I have reasoning for why I think that is. I think it's the curses from the book of Devarim. That's my interpretation of it. I think it's a playing out of that prophecy, but it's the it is the you know I don't know, man. It grew so fast that you almost have to think that it's like biblically,
Yeah,
you
the
know,
speed is alarming, shocking, and like
and
you
it's
said,
not and it's not
miraculous in
just
itself.
this repeats itself time and time and time, throughout history. Do you guys know the certain chapter I'm talking about in I believe it's Devarim,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
God where Hashem is warning what will happen if the commandments are not obeyed. And it says he'll spread you to the four corners of the earth. You'll never live in peace. And it's not, if you really read it, um, and you think about Jewish history, it lines up one to one. It is extremely, and that was, yeah, I always get asked by people. I always get into conversations with people that are not religious, and they ask me like, "What proof do you have that this is true?" And that's always the verse that I bring them up, because what you want to do is show Bible next to history, because you can prove history happened, and you're trying to prove it. The Bible will tell you ahead of time what happened in history. And I always point to that. So I think it's biblical. I think these risings up of anti-Semitism, whether it be in the Reich or whether it be in the US now, or whether it be in the Soviet Union, whether it be wherever it's risen up, I think it's fueled. I think it's fueled because of the biblical punishment. That's my. Not everyone will agree with me on that, but that's the only thing I can think of because you're right. It's irrational. It's irrational how quick it's picked up.
That's the problem.
Makes no sense.
It's not, okay, there's anti-Semitism. We're talking, this is and I actually would tell people don't go on X and don't see it because it's hard to stomach. It is mind-boggling what's going on in there. It's mind-boggling. But in a sense, in this like weird way, it kind of, in a sense, like, and I agree with you, it almost makes you think like, there's something biblical going on from just from the it's not natural what's going on. It's irrational and
Exactly, and it supersedes whatever the Jewish people do. No matter what the Jewish people do, it always happens. It doesn't matter if we all get into banking. What'd you say?
It's like supernatural. Like it's
Exactly. It's like it doesn't matter if we all become bankers, they're gonna go after us for being bankers. If we all become poor, they're gonna get after us for not being bankers. If we don't have a state, they're gonna be mad at us for being a wandering people. If we have a state, they're gonna get mad at us for having a state. That's the new one. So it has to be. There's no other explanation. And there's going to be some person that's going to watch this, some, person that's from that fringe right conspiratorial thing who's like, oh, and they always say you got kicked out of 109 places, and you're saying, how could that be? And you don't want to blame yourself.
That's a very exaggerated number, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not even an accurate number.
They say 119 if I'm not mistaken.
Huh? No,
it's 109. It's 109. The reason I have it memorized is because there was a hashtag that went viral like a year ago saying "Make America" #110. So I mean, you just have to. If you look at it, and these people try to say every time when the people that make that argument, they say, "Oh, well, it's you guys." Okay, what did we do? What did we do? Tell me. Oh, you guys were all doing usury. Okay, what about here where we weren't doing usury? Why did we get kicked out of there? Oh, well, you guys were just wandering people. Okay, then why are these people crying that we have a state now? It's like, oh, you guys were all degenerate people that were funding trans stuff. They say that about the Third Reich. It's like, okay, then why did we get kicked out for being religious over there? It's not that I don't know. You get the point I'm trying to make. It's super no matter what we do.
One of the things that they'll say, like, we'll get like DMs from anti-Semites also sometimes, and they'll say that there were Jews in the last few, presidents' cabinets that were very influential in the president's ear and all that. I'm like, every single president was Christian, and like most of the banks and most of the powerful people in America are Irish, if I'm not mistaken. And like, how come we're not talking about them? Like, why is this? There's such an obsession. It's really like
biblical.
Yeah. And we actually were talking about this on Friday, but the Deuteronomy, Devarim 9:17, I think, that it says that
this week's
parsha. I don't know when we release it. It's not going to be this week's parsha anymore, but talking about how when we basically earn the land of Israel, it's not because of our righteousness, but it's because of the wickedness of the nations, or
we read it this especially
the wickedness of the nations, or the zechut avot, right? The promise given to our ancestors. But the fact is, it's not due to our righteousness, and that should tell us a lot. Like, after the Holocaust, we got the land of Israel because the nations reached such a level of wickedness that this is why we need our own place to live. We need our own.
It's very interesting that the Torah seems to constantly, it's almost like we're getting knocked in the head constantly throughout the Bible and the prophets. Like, we're getting knocked in the head. You would think for the chosen people, a lot of the rhetoric going on, of course, is like, you guys think you're the chosen people, look how you act. You guys think you're the chosen, please look at. Well, actually, the Torah is the one that says we're a stiff-necked nation. We've done terrible things. Like for a chosen people, the Torah is not exactly giving us our roses. It is actually constantly hitting us over the head and telling us we have to be better. I wish people would read read carefully these verses and see what the Torah itself says about our chosenness, that it's not about us being better. It's about having extraordinary forefathers, yes,
Yeah.
that did some incredible things that changed the world, and it is also about wickedness of others, not the righteousness of our own. So these are important points that when you look at these, especially this week's parsha, it really really hammers that home. And I wish these would get presented to the public. Like it's as if like they think like the Torah is like putting us on a pedestal, but the Torah actually
not.
does not put us on a pedestal. It is constantly hitting us over the head.
But what's
It's like
interesting is that if you're inventing a religion, you would never try to sell this religion to this audience.
exactly.
They'd be
Yeah.
like, why would we want this? We have to keep all these laws and everyone hates us and God hates us. It seems like, like that doesn't make sense. So the fact of the matter is we understand the value of being introspective.
Yeah.
I was actually Rabbi Maruf made this point about, the Nakba is something that that's the tragedy that the Palestinians bring up about their history, and it's really
It's also fake, but
whatever. That's separate issue. But the point is that they identify that as the biggest tragedy of their history, and the Zionists are the cause, and it's constantly being brought up. It's the Zionists, it's the Jews, and so on. On our saddest day in our history that's Tisha B'Av. We don't ever talk about like the Romans.
Yeah.
We're always talking about what did we do wrong? Why did
Wow.
we deserve this?
Wow.
Right? We're not our identity is not tied into blaming some other nation for our
And the
problems.
same goes with the Nevi'im.
Yeah.
Throughout the prophets, it's always about what we did wrong, not about Assyrians, not about
Yeah.
very little talk about
It's
that.
true.
Yeah.
It's very true.
Excellent point. Okay,
Very true.
let's move on. Many have criticized the traditional Hasbara model, pointing to Gallicentric advocacy, ADL-style institutional responses, and a failure to win hearts and minds on campuses. Do you agree with that assessment? And if so, what kind of messaging or approach do you think would actually resonate with young people in the broader cultural moment we're in? And it has been shown statistically that with the younger generation is where we're really failing the most right now.
So yeah, the first thing that has to be done is you got to stop calling everything anti-Semitic. You have to. I understand that it might be true sometimes, maybe most of the time on the stuff that people are saying. But people are not going to stop having the opinion that they're having because you're calling it anti-Semitic. That's not how people's minds work. Maybe that worked 10 years ago. Before I got into politics, the thought of somebody calling me a racist make me shiver. Like, oh my gosh, no, I'm not racist, please, stuff like that. And then I went and I spoke out against BLM, and I started caring less about being called racist. Because I know that I'm not. And these people, they believe what they believe. You call them an anti-Semite, in their minds, they don't think they're anti-Semitic. For the left more, this goes to the left more. So that's the first thing. Stop calling everything anti-Semitic and only attacking the person and not attacking the idea. I think the best approach to doing it, you mentioned campuses. You need to find people that knows their stuff, that knows, all of the responses to all of the common arguments. And you got to do similar to what Charlie Kirk has done. You got to sit someone at a table, have a line, and just shoot down every single one and push those clips everywhere. Because right now, it doesn't matter if you're talking about the millennials, it doesn't matter if you're talking about Gen Z, it doesn't even matter if you're talking about the young Gen Alpha. Everyone is getting all of their information from a screen. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you match where these people's news are coming from and you put your content in front of their eyes. So I think the first thing would be to have people debating people with these ideas and taking away the demonizing of the people, and instead the demonizing, or not even the demonizing, just the dismemberment of their ideas. I've seen way too many, people just attacking somebody and not attacking their idea, and that gets us nowhere.
Ad hominem, ad hominem, ad hominem.
Exactly. It gets us nowhere.
Yeah.
So I think that you got to fight ideas with ideas.
I would always cringe. Like I remember years ago when the whole Kyrie Irving thing happened,
Hmm.
and they were like basically I think it was the ADL, I forget, but basically like the response is always you're gonna have to go to a Holocaust museum and donate to whatever cause. Or to me that's like, first of all, it sounds like Disneyland, like for an anti-Semite to take him to the Holocaust museum, like that already in itself is like,
Yeah.
how is that going to help? So that always made me like, feel strange. But besides for that, I think I agree with you. I think we need better people, but I actually think that, and I think Israel needs to do a better job with their PR because the old Hasbara system isn't working. I find that the most effective voices on campuses that I've seen is like people like Rudy Rachman and people like Abraham Hamra and Tal Oran, the traveling clot. Like, why them? Because they are brown Jews. Let's be,
It's
I don't
true.
know. We're Persian.
It's true.
But, I think that that kind of messes with people's heads. Like, what do you mean? Jews can look like this? They don't, for some reason, everybody
They
thinks, oh,
contradict the narrative that every Israeli is from Poland.
correct. And then they're we're from Iran, where people had to leave in most people in 1979. People had to leave from many Arab countries, and people like Gad Saad, these people who are speaking out, they he comes from experience. Like, hey, we had a huge thriving Jewish community in Lebanon, and look at us now. Those voices are hard to argue with because people have to pay attention. Like,
Exactly.
such a
Yeah.
thing. But when people hear, I've heard many people be like, I didn't even know there were black Jews. Like, I was shocked. Like, you go to
Yeah.
Israel, like,
Yeah.
so many black Jews everywhere.
I also think it would be beneficial, and I'm only going to say this because you brought up the ADL. I also think it would be very beneficial to put left wing leaning conservative pages and advocacy groups. I think it would just the disbandment of them completely would help us quite a bit because they don't really do anything good for us. They do most of the crying about the anti-Semitism, whereas the people on the right, they're more pro attacking the ideas head on. I
Yeah.
would even just because you mentioned the ADL, I'll get my little rant off. I don't think there is any organization I despise more than the ADL. I do
Love
not like them. I do not like them one bit. Um, I remember when I was younger, before I was into politics, they would post something here and there, and I might share it to my story about something that was like legitimately anti-Semitic. But when you dig into them, I think they cause a lot of anti-Semitism. Groups like the ADL, um, saying like, I think they said like I think on their for defamation reasons, you got to look this up. Don't take me at my word. I think on their website it says that being white is okay is an anti-Semitic slogan,
it.
or they also say that abortion is a Jewish value. So right then, and now that one I know is true. Abortion is a Jewish value. They've openly said that. I've responded to that, and it's just in those two things alone, you have the entire white populace of the United States seeing us as an enemy, saying that the Jews, the ADL who purports to represent Jews, is now saying it's not okay to be white. And then you are also telling them that Jews think it's okay to murder babies. So I think as
Hard.
far as Hasbara goes, if you move away from the left wing people who are trying to push us as something that we're not, and you get to real the core of attacking the arguments with a logical, more right wing way, I think at least for the right wing critics, will do a little better. Because when you have these far right wing people, yeah, they'll attack Ben Shapiro and yeah, they'll attack Gad Sad. But a lot of the people that they're attacking are like the CEO of ADL or not CEO, the owner of ADL or stuff like that. So I think if you push those people out of the space, we'll be doing a lot better too.
I remember a few years ago, Bradley Cooper was playing some Jewish musician in a movie, and he had like a prosthetic nose to look more like him, and they were crying anti-Semitism, and I don't know if it was them. I don't remember which group was. I don't want to say it was ADL, but and I was just like, he's playing a character that looked like that. Like, what's the
Exactly.
problem? Like, why? I don't understand why we're making.
Wait, I have a question for you now.
Yeah.
If you think that's okay, do you think blackface is okay too? I gotta ask.
Do I think blackface is okay? That's a good question. Now that we know how people feel about it, obviously not. But like, I think when I remember, what's his name was playing, Jimmy Kimmel was playing Karl Malone. So if he's playing Karl Malone, he has to wear the Karl Malone costume, I guess. But
Exactly.
he wasn't being racist when he was doing it. I think he was just making fun of Karl Malone. So it
Yeah.
depends what you're doing. If you're wearing blackface just to be like Howard Stern wearing blackface or whatever it is, obviously that's different. That's
Yeah.
you're trying
I,
to.
I have this. I have the same take. Yeah, I have the same take as you.
Yeah, just don't, if you're doing it, depends why you're doing it. And like, is it about the person or are you making fun of the black part of it? So that's kind
Exactly.
of how I feel about it. But
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, so moving on to the next question. As an observant Jew working in a largely Christian and secular conservative space, how do you navigate tensions or disagreements on issues like religion, Israel, and moral values with colleagues or influencers who don't share your worldview?
Mm. It's a good question. It's a good question. Um, so I will say that most of the first we'll start about, I'll start with Christianity. Most of the people I work with, you're right, they're Christians. And the Christians, they believe that in order for me to achieve salvation after death, I need to accept their Savior. Um, when I was first getting into the movement, I would get offended because the first area of contention that you're asking me about came from them trying to convert me all the time. I would get kind of offended, like, why do you not? But I kind of moved away from that. And, every time that it happens to me now, I kind of just have this lens in my head. This person loves me. And because of their religion, they believe they want me, that I need to believe a certain thing or else I'm going to be punished for eternity. It comes from a good place in their heart, even knowing. So I don't get mad at them for that. It does happen quite a bit with people that I work with every day or people that I don't work with so often. It's just they believe that they want to, save me. But with the difference of religion in specific when it comes to Christians, I am a conservative and my long-term ambitions are I want to be a senator in this country. I've wanted to since I was young. I'm going to be working with mainly Christians in the Senate, and I have no issue with doing it because Christian moral ethics and Jewish moral ethics are very closely aligned. I mean, if you go to the golden rule in Christianity is, I think it's like treat others how you want to be treated, right? And then Judaism doesn't necessarily have a golden rule that's as boom a statement as that is Christianity's. But I mean, you have Rabbi Hillel
Right.
who was alive, and what did he say?
Torah on
Don't
one foot. Love your neighbor as yourself.
exactly, so even at the most
Do not
basic.
do it to others, or you don't want. Don't
Yeah,
yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's what is hateful to your neighbor is hateful. What is hateful to you is hateful to your neighbor. And he said, if you know that, you know the entire Torah. The rest is commentary.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said that.
Full study. Yeah. That's
Yeah, and so even in the most like basic level, you have that alignment. Do we agree on some different theological points? Of course. But when it comes to like morals, they're very closely aligned, especially when it comes to what the conservative movement wants. I'm anti-abortion. The Christians are anti-abortion on the right. I do not want to see. I want to see gay marriage reversed in this country. Same thing. I do not think that men can be women. They're opposed to that as well. They share the book of Genesis with us. It's just we're in line with a bunch of the same stuff. So
One of
if
the
there,
best. Oh,
Mhm.
sorry. I just want to say one of the best interfaith voices in the Jewish world was Rabbi Sachs.
May his memory be a blessing.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, you should probably gobble that up because that gives a lot of direction, in terms of the goals that you're aiming towards and how to.
100%.
I'm sure you probably have gobbled it up. No,
Oh my gosh, yeah, I watch him all the time and read his books. It's
phenomenal.
morality.
Rabbi Sachs he was a blessing not only to the Jewish people but to the world.
Exactly. And I was just we were talking about it the other day. I find myself wondering what would Rabbi Sachs say about everything that's going on today.
Yeah,
It's one of it's one of the hardest things about being in this space and time that we're in is that I don't ha we can't I can't we don't have that fallback of Rabbi Sachs's voice to illuminate in these extremely unnatural times that we're
Yeah.
in a
I
way.
I also feel like I don't even know if you would get invited to like a Piers Morgan kind of show, or if you would go on, because the type of rabbis that they find to
Oh
put on these
God.
shows
Oh God.
are like I've never.
Rabbi Shmuley Buteyek.
Right, all of these. Forget about him. There was a bunch of other ones that they
His
brought
kids
up.
are actually really
Yeah, yeah.
fine. That's him.
But the thing is, forget about that. You have other rabbis that like Candace Owens brought to some. I forget who else. Some other people brought up.
I
Uh,
remember that I was there for that interview. I
yeah,
remember.
like they bring on these rabbis. I'm like, I don't think these people have a following. Like, I don't. I've never met anyone who's like, I follow this guy. Like, where do they find these people? And unfortunately, I don't think they would put a microphone in front of Rabbi Sachs today. But he would obviously still his voice would be heard because he had a big platform. And I just think that his
I was even just saying it in terms of myself. I just would like to hear his thoughts for my sanity. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
100%,
Uh,
100%.
yeah, you know who I would love to go for him to go on Piers Morgan? Someone like Ami Kozak would be fantastic.
Omid Kozak is great. I've met him. Very nice guy. Very smart guy.
we had
Very.
him on the
He
pod.
has very thoughtful things to always say.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Um, but yeah, so as far as the religious aspect of your question, no issue because we align on pretty much everything. We have the same goals. We have the same view of where we want the country to go. Now you also asked about, am I correct in remembering you also asked about Israel and their opinions on Israel?
Yeah.
So listen, as a conservative, an American conservative, I do not believe, might get some pushback on this. I do not believe you necessarily need to support Israel enthusiastically to be considered a conservative and for me to work next to you. But I'm going to put a very specific frame around this, extremely specific. I'm talking about people who do not want to give American tax dollars to Israel because they're isolationists. Isolationism is a brain dead political ideology. Just imagine what would happen if the isolationists in the 30s prevented the U.S. from getting involved in World War II. It's like it's a dead ideology. But if somebody holds that, I don't mind working by them on the other issues that we have in line. However, if it's somebody that doesn't support the state of Israel because they don't believe that Jewish people deserve a state, or it's like something rooted in the disapproval of the Jewish people, or if it's something rooted in sympathy for radical Islam, like you see a lot of these people on the right who are probably funded by Qatar. If it's like that, those two groups of people I'm not going to work with, and those two groups of people I won't touch because they're either sellouts who are dishonest. You don't want to work with dishonest people, or two, they hate me because I'm a Jew. So those two people I won't work with. But if you are a type of right winger who just believes that America and tax dollars should just stay within our domestic borders, I'll probably have a conversation with you about how, unwise that is. But I won't refuse to work with you on stuff we agree on.
That's
You
fair.
know, and
Yeah.
in my time, I've ran into a couple people like that, and I've worked with a couple people like that who have had, I won't name them, and we've had long discussions on isolationism and stuff like that. But there are people that express to me, "Hey, man, no, I have no beef against Israel. Man, I don't. Why would I ally with Iran or Hezbollah or these groups over Israel? Israel's more Western than them." But I just don't. I don't think it's our business to do that. And obviously, I have my retorts to that. All the American interests in having a leg in different parts of the world. But
$3 billion a year, or whatever it is that
yeah,
Israel
exactly.
Not
If
even.
they
not even
if
but
they're
but
just
they
if
have
they're
to buy
just thinking
American
with their
weapons.
yeah, if they're just thinking with their pocketbook, I'll work with them. That's that.
The thing is also just one of the most frustrating things about the arguments they make is that America fought like a bunch of regime change wars since 9/11, and they were fighting, Arab countries, and naturally there's going to be blowback. And of course, the little Satan is going to get the brunt of it because they're right there. So you can't just be like, okay, see you later. Peace out, Israel. It was
Yeah,
nice
but
talking to
you don't want to go down this hole because then they're going to tell you that they fought all those regime changes for the
for,
little
for,
Satan,
for Israel.
you know.
Yeah.
But no, you
Even
have
though
a
Israel was against the Iraq War, and they'll say Bibi Netanyahu. Bibi Netanyahu
exactly,
had
Faith
no
is the
influence.
thing,
Yeah.
yeah.
exactly. But it's also you don't even need to go as if you really want to get to the root of it, you can just make the generalized point that Israel, I mean, not Israel, the Islamic Empire, you refer to them as like Arab states. I just call it the Islamic Empire because that's just what it is. All the Muslims, whether they interfight or not, it's one big empire. They all have one common goal, which is the conversion of the entire planet to Islam. Not only the US, it's just the West in general has been fighting the war for thousands, or fighting the Islamic Empire for thousands of years. I mean, you could just the Crusades is the first example that comes to your mind. They tried to take over the entirety of the West, and since then it's just been nonstop fighting. You can't the West and in the Islamic Empire they can't coexist without conflict. So any Westerners who are advocating on behalf of the Islamic Empire is doing so to the detriment of their own country. So that's the type of person I wouldn't deal with because I don't think that they're aligned with me in any way.
So for the fifth question, I wanted to ask you, do you have hope for the future? What do you see in terms of trends among young Jews or other movements that would make you have hope for the right direction in the future?
Yeah, it's very interesting. October 7th was obviously a tragedy, right? Um, and all of the lives that were lost, may they rest in peace, and may we remember them every day that we live. But something, I guess, good that came out of October 7th, and it feels so weird to say that, is the amount of secular Jews I see coming to Chabads, and the amount of Jews that I see are actually acknowledging their heritage and coming together because of it. That gives me hope because we are as the Jewish people, we are in the most trouble when we put aside who we are, when we don't want to acknowledge who we are, when we don't want to adhere to the covenant that all of us are a part of, that was made by Avraham and Hashem, and then later Moses and Hashem. That gives me hope, the type of unity I'm seeing in our people. Um, you obviously have some of the stragglers that are advocating for the enemy and the people that don't like us. But I see a lot of people that, pre-October 7th wouldn't have ever really identified with anything remotely Jewish, never been to a Chabad, never posted anything about Israel, never thought of going to Israel, never thought of doing anything like that. And now these are people that have golden ribbons in their Instagrams, going to pro-Israel marches, doing all this stuff. I think that's a good thing. I think when the Jewish people are united, I think that makes Hashem happy. And I think when Hashem's happy, we live a better life. So that gives me hope. But just as we are doing better, so is the enemy. Opposition to us is growing at a rate that you mentioned earlier is just irrational, inconceivable. So, I'm optimistic that we can raise to match and fight it. We haven't yet. Well, I mean, let's just be honest with each other. We're getting pummeled right now.
Yeah.
We're getting pummeled. As you mentioned, Hasbara is failing. But if this pattern of Jewish unity and Jewish speaking out continues and it goes into overdrive, I'm optimistic of the future. I think that we can push back against it to get us to a good point. But even you asked me if there's anything I see that has me optimistic. The one thing that I will say, regardless, it doesn't really matter what I see in the now. The Jewish people have always been okay, and we're always going to be okay. Every Pesach, when you read the Haggadah, it talks about every single person that's come after us, every single powerful, and how none of them exist. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know if a nation is going to invade Israel. I don't know if a nation is going to do another Shoah. I don't know. But what I do know is that when it all ends, we're going to be okay because it's biblical and because that's been the pattern of history. So I'll always be optimistic. It doesn't matter how down in the dirt. If the war ended tomorrow and Israel was the richest country in the world, I would feel just as optimistic as I did on the day of October 7th. That can't shake because we will always be okay. We have always been okay and we will always be okay.
I was with my cousins who were visiting from Israel this Shabbat, and I asked them similar question, like, what are you seeing? Because obviously there's fatigue from the war and all that, but what are you optimistic about? And they said something interesting, that they're noticing there's a lot of renewed spirit and interest in Judaism, even among celebrities.
Yeah,
Like, celebrities in Israel are like becoming outwardly proud of their Judaism.
sure.
It's just like an interesting thing that's happening. It's fascinating.
It's true. Yeah, there's something like to feed into what you're saying, just a personal experience I had. At the Daily Wire, a lot of people say that the Daily Wire is like a completely Jewish company and stuff like that. But in reality, there's like 3 Jews that work at the entire company out of hundreds of employees, and a few of them are just completely secular. They're Jewish, they're conservative, but they don't keep. Post October 7th, I've had more than one of them come up to me and ask to wrap tefillin for the first time,
Wow.
and ask me where the Chabad is. And I even have one of them. His name was Ira, and he came to shul with me, and he started wrapping tefillin every day. I gave him a pair of my tefillin, an extra one that I had. Wraps every single day. Went to New York, got his own pair, came home, and now he goes to shul every single Shabbos. It's a good trend when it's coming to when it's coming to secular people turning over, because I think they realize the real danger of being a Jew alone in the world. They see really what we're up against, and they want to turn to their own people for comfort. So it's a really good trend.
I will just say, back to circle back to the anti-Semitism, hope in regards to anti-Semitism. It's different. My example that I'm going to give is very different for many reasons, but there was a time not long ago that we thought that liberalism and wokeism is like an immovable object that's just going to continue to you know
Swallow everything up.
swallow everything up. What happened? Well, kind of like what you said, right? Conservatives mobilized, boots on the ground. You see Charlie Kirk going to colleges, the online space, all that, and all of a sudden things flipped. It's different, of course, but I do think that it does serve a model that we should think about. That things do change. There are times, where we thought that the country is like 100% going in a certain direction, and things change, and it changes because of actions taken. You can't just leave it. And you also can't feel like it's hopeless even if you were to do something. What we really need to do is do something and let the chips fall and see what happens because things can and do change. Um, yep.
And I want to also just add, it's a beautiful message, but I want to add to that that one of the positives that I see that we should, give a shout out to are the many friends that we never knew we had, that are coming out to speak on our
Oh, yes, yes.
behalf, from the non-Jewish world and from the Jewish world, but who are speaking out like, and they're taking a big risk in many ways now. And it's funny, it says Jews control the media. If that's the case, why are we seeing that everyone's against the Jews in the media?
The thing
So
Exactly.
is when people say you're not allowed to talk bad against the Jews, and that's all that's happening.
yeah.
It's like you're not allowed to say anything good about the Jews
Yeah,
at
yeah.
this point. But okay,
That's
sorry,
true.
go on.
Or
I'm
they'll
sorry,
say,
guys.
I'm not allowed to, a lot of them say like, I'm not allowed to talk about this, but you're talking about it all the time.
Like
So
literally
yeah,
all the time. Sorry to interrupt.
yeah. So I want to just give a shout out to those people who we find, constantly online who are so courageous and speaking up for us, and they're seeing what's happening.
The righteous among the nations.
Yes, absolutely. Just one of them that comes to mind, I see like Patricia Heaton, the
Mm.
actress from Everybody Loves Raymond. Like I never thought that she would be like politically active, and this is the one thing she's very, adamant about, and she's constantly defending the Jews, and she sees it for what it is. And I'm like, oh, that's really like nice to see that someone like that is like I would never expect it. So it's really it's a nice thing to see at the same
Good
time.
trend. Yeah.
And just to finalize, the last question I wanted to discuss, and we kind of touched on it a little bit, is the fact that you're grounded in Torah values. How do you think Jewish tradition can offer moral clarity in today's cultural chaos? Are there specific teachings or frameworks that you think young people, Jewish or not, need to hear right now?
Hmm. That's a really good question. You know, when it comes to values from the Torah, I'm gonna give my advice specifically to the Jewish people since we've been talking about it. I know you asked for those who aren't and those who are. I'm gonna give. It's gonna sound kind of cliche because you asked me about which values specifically, but I'm gonna say all of them. And the reason I say all of them is because the Jewish people fall apart when we don't adhere to the entire book that our ancestors were given. That's been the case throughout all of history. We fell short during the time of the second Beis Hamikdash. We got kicked out. Throughout all of Jewish history, not adhering to the entirety, you can follow parts of it. You can follow certain things. If you don't do all of it, you fall apart. Deuteronomy 4:2, it says you shouldn't add or take away anything from what I'm giving you. You can't follow some and not others. So I think every single value, every single word in the Torah is divine. Every single word was put there for a reason. Every single sentence has a meaning, and every single Jewish person should go through it and read it and live their daily lives by the words in it. And I can't emphasize that enough. There are so many secular Jews in the world wondering this hate. What am I supposed to do about it? They're living a completely directionless life because they don't know what direction to go. But if they had grounds in their faith, then they would at least have a direction and they would at least know um, how to turn to their community. And so yeah, I would say all of it, not to sound cliche. I would say pick up a Torah and instead of listening for one specific value to live by, listen to the thousands and thousands of them that you can find inside of the Torah.
So I actually want to add to that. Today, I was sitting next to one of my friends who's a traditional, not a Shomer Shabbat guy. Our community is Sephardic community, so we have a lot of people who don't observe everything, but in the shul we're all the same. And I was sitting next to him, and he was reading he was just reading the parsha, and he was like, "This is unbelievable." I noticed that every time I'm hearing the Torah and I'm reading inside, he's reading the English. He's like, I really feel like this is speaking out this is speaking to me about what's happening right now in the
Yeah,
world. And you hear that from so many people, but I experience it myself. I see it all the time. You're like, wow,
it's true.
this is something that, and you can take, it's not just like a cool thing. It's not like, wow, this is what a coincidence, but there's actually like a lot of there's a lot of advice you can take from the Torah on how to
Exactly.
respond to what's happening. So it's very interesting.
It's true. I mean, how many times does it say in the Torah that these words are eternal? It doesn't say this. The Torah wasn't written just as a message of the people for the people that were alive when it was given. It says the words are ever living and they'll ring true throughout all of history. Um, so yeah, it makes sense that he was thinking that. I think that when I read it, you know, yeah, yeah, 100%. I understand why he was like that.
Well, Jacob, we really want to thank you for coming on the podcast. It was an absolute pleasure. We would love to have you on again once sometime. Obviously,
God willing.
you know we think that what you're doing, speaking out for our people, is such a important thing, and we value everything that you do. And we hope that many people who are not familiar with your work should be turned on to it after listening to this podcast. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me.
Tov, keep up the good work, and we appreciate everything. Thank you.
Shavua tov, you too.